Alrighty, so we're just going to wait. Let's give it another 2 minutes, and then we'll kick off. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is our first Ask Us Anything session on Kubernetes of 2021. We'll do some introductions before we get started. Just going to wait another couple of minutes, and then we'll launch live. If you're looking for our Slack, I'm going to post that live into the chat right now. There you go, platform9.slack.io. Jump in, sign up. The Slack channel we use for all things related to Kubernetes and Platform 9, so feel free to ask any questions. In there, you'll see an AMA channel. That's the Ask Me Anything channel. Feel free to post questions in there. And I think we will kick off momentarily. All right. Should we end the poll?
Yeah.
I'm going to click share results. Actually, I think we might do a quick introduction, overview of what we're the aim for today, and then jump into some questions. All right. I'm going to click share my screen. I'm going to share Safari, which just did not work. All right. Cool. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As I said just earlier, this is our first Ask Me Anything session for Platform 9 on Kubernetes. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to 2021. Really looking forward to this year being much, much better than last year. So, some logistics for today. We're going to use Slack for driving a lot of the questions. Feel free to message Roopak and I directly if you have questions. You don't want to be in the public channel. If you're fine to use the public channel, sign up and use the channel that's AMA. If you don't already have a free tier account and you just want to get going and I guess follow along with some activities, feel free to sign up at platform9.com. That'll allow you to build clusters on any type of virtual machine you've got running, cloud accounts in Azure and AWS, physical machines if you have them. So that's also a good way to be able to get going. Anything you want to ask today around Kubernetes or Platform 9 is a fair topic. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them. If we can't, we'll definitely be posting any answers to Slack as well as our community site as well. So to introduce myself, I am Chris Jones. That's the photo on the right there. I'm a product manager here at Platform 9. Been with the company for nearly 2 years. I look after our Kubernetes platform, including the free product and our enterprise offerings. Prior to Platform 9, I was product managing an application performance management platform and hybrid cloud management platform at Quest Software. I'll let Roopak introduce himself.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to meet you all. I'm co-founder and CTO at Platform 9. I have been involved with Kubernetes ever since its inception. So looking forward to the questions and the discussions.
All right, I'm going to click stop share and I'll click share results for the questionnaire. So the first question is, where do you intend to deploy Kubernetes? On-prem is leading alongside of VMs. I'm going to assume that the two of those are fairly similar. I would at least choose, if I was presented with those two options, what would I choose? If I was running a VM on-prem, I'd choose VMs. And then AWS, I guess, is the second leader in there. Where are you in your Kubernetes journey? Just getting started. That's super common for everyone that's online. We have a free platform, and we do lots of interviews with users of that product, as well as send out plenty of surveys. And the majority of the industry and people in high tech software are learning about Kubernetes. I'm sure Roopak is still learning as well. I know I definitely am. It moves at a pretty fast rate. It's always interesting to hear what people are trying to do with Kubernetes and the way that people interpret how different APIs are being developed. And the last question, do you have a Platform9 free Kubernetes account? Some do, some don't. That's totally fine. We're here just to help, right? We spend our days living in the Kubernetes world. And this session is to really help everyone further their endeavors. I'm going to click stop sharing, close that poll, and let me transition over to Slack. That's not there. If people are having trouble with Slack, feel free to post questions into the main chat. You can choose either directly to panelists or attendees. So let's throw it in there. Roopak, do you want to start off with should we do a quick overview of the Platform9 product and then maybe talk about a bit of our journey to containerizing our stats management plane?
Sure. Give me a second. So with Platform9, we started, I guess, in 2016 or 2017. It's been almost 3.5 to 4 years since we started. We started working with Kubernetes even before that, a year prior to that. And I think the first version that we released in the wild was Kubernetes version 1.4. And what we have done ever since then is really take on how Kubernetes is built and added not only Kubernetes, but also added a lot of things associated with it to create a platform that is very helpful for developers and operators, features which will help you as a developer to become productive, specifically on environments where certain things are not available, like load balancer is not available in on-prem version, and it's difficult to configure bare metal servers with multiple nodes coming together to form a cluster, especially if you're trying to do a staging or a product ready customer ready cluster. So that's why we started, and I think our first version was 1.4, and ever since we started, we have been upgrading our customers. It used to be much faster. Nowadays, Kubernetes releases one release every quarter, but now we are at 1.19. So we have come a long way from 1.4 to 1.19 or 1.18. I'm not sure which one is the current one. And in the process of that, we have learned a lot of things. When we first started, it was all about public clouds. AWS was the first one that we came out with. Creating clusters on AWS was not there with EKS, and even Azure was not present. GK was the only public cloud company who had a Kubernetes solution on the public cloud. So that's where we started, and we have slowly expanded to other places, AWS, Azure, running it on virtual machines on-prem, and obviously on bare metal, which is which looks like running on-prem is the most popular of the alternatives that all the attendees have chosen today. So we really specialize in that. One thing that we do very well is the what we call as rock solid Kubernetes. So we have had experience, like I said, running it for 3.5 to 4 years now. With all the upgrades, we have one click upgrade in our product, uh, which our customers absolutely love, because as I said, Kubernetes does come out with a release every quarter, and you have to keep up with it. Specifically because in past there were quite a few, not a whole lot, but there were a few security issues that we had to patch as soon as possible, and also upgrades from XCD2 to XCD3. Folks who are familiar with the Kubernetes internal architecture, it is very painful if you're trying to do by yourself. Chris, anything to add?
Definitely is. I mean, I was working on multi-cloud management platforms when I first started working with Kubernetes. My development team was kind of like, where is this thing coming from? We've heard about containers, and all of a sudden we had customers that were running Docker Swarm at that point. That's what a lot of people started with. And then it seemed almost like instantaneous, like everyone that was asking for help with understanding and monitoring and managing Docker Swarm was all of a sudden on Kubernetes. It was around that time that I actually moved to Platform9, and one day I decided, I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn Kubernetes. I'm going to do this by myself. So I tried to scour the web for a way to build a Kubernetes cluster on Ubuntu 18, just type in commands. I quickly gave up after about 4 hours of searching. I was just like, all right, I don't want to do this Minikube thing. That's not what I want. I want to be able to learn how to build a production ready cluster. And I was just like, this is hard. I was like, I think I'm just wasting my time. I'm like, we've done some of the hard work. So I'm like, I might as well start there and then work backwards. So a chat's come in about sort of getting started with Platform9. What I might do is just share my screen and go through a super quick 101. That might be a good place to start to answer that question. So I'm going to click share my screen. Please do let me know if no one can see what's going on. Step one, if you've never gone to Platform9, start off by putting in your email here. I always use this one. This will then take you to the next step about deploying a cluster. If you just want to see what's going on within Platform9, you can explore a live demo that's a read-only environment that we run, or click deploy now. Select where you're looking to run your Kubernetes clusters, and then follow the process. These are primarily here to make sure that you've got the right resources available. So if you have everything you need to get going, click proceed and then complete signing up. When you sign up, you will be redirected and you actually land in Platform9. This is our 5.0 environment that everyone will be getting provisioned into. If people have been using Platform9 for a little bit, they would have been upgraded right before the Christmas and holiday break. From this page, you can go in and start building clusters immediately. If you want to go in adding in nodes, you can do that directly. But I'd sort of encourage people, right? Sign up, come to infrastructure. If you're looking at adding AWS or Azure, come to cloud providers, click add cloud provider, and fill in the required details. The second step of this will let you know whether or not you've got the right access and policies available for that cloud account to work correctly. If you're looking at doing a node on-prem, so either a virtual machine or physical, or even just a VM on your laptop, just click add cluster, choose where you're looking to deploy, and pick your option. One click will get you going super fast. You can just come in, name the cluster, select the Kubernetes version you want to deploy, select the node, and we'll go and deploy a single node cluster. And you can see the defaults that it's getting set up with. Once that process goes on, it'll start building actually. Actually, I might just do that live. Let me do that. So you might have a node there. One click on a VM, AMA cluster. If I can spell, I'm going to go 117 for fun, and then I'm going to click go. It will do a check around resource utilization. As we are installing Kubernetes as well as some of our components onto that node, we do recommend having at least 20 gig of free storage space on a node to get going. So there will be log files and stuff that consume a little bit of space, obviously the operating system running as well as the cluster itself.
Chris, what operating systems would you recommend choosing?
You know, I used to be a big fan of CentOS. Honestly, after having used both over the last sort of 18 months to build out clusters and learn and do things on, Ubuntu's just been a little bit more stable and easy and quicker to get going with. So I'd say Ubuntu 18. 2004, we'll be launching support in the coming months. You can give it a try, but I have no guarantees that it's going to work. So yeah, I'd go with Ubuntu 18. That's going to be the fastest path to success.
And what do I need to do to prepare for prepare the node before I go and join it to a cluster? Are there any prerequisites that you would recommend? You spoke about 20 gig of free space. Anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to do a single node cluster, I'd definitely be saying 16 gig of RAM is a good place to start. I've done plenty of testing on smaller virtual machines. Once you get below 8, everything starts to get a little bit slow. We do deploy a monitoring stack inside of the cluster that's made up of Prometheus and Grafana and Alert Manager. And if there's not enough resources, Kubernetes will, prevent the application from coming up due to resource constraints. We can look at multi-master and single master clusters, but yeah, from a single node cluster perspective, I would definitely recommend 12, 16 gig of RAM, 2 CPUs. Obviously, the more CPUs you can give, the faster that environment's going to come up. Just to explain what's going on my screen right now, this node I've used previously. So what's going on in the background is Platform9 is actually cleaning up any elements of that node that had previously been there. If you have a VM that you've had Kubernetes on before, definitely remove all of those components, right? We go through, and as you can see, there's a number of items that we're going to deploy. Outside of providing the operating system, you just need to use it with sudo privileges. Our CLI will take care of all of the operating system level prerequisites and then connect it to Platform9. Once that happens, you can build a cluster from the UI, and we'll go through and start deploying everything. So you can see we're deploying Docker, we're deploying Eksd, we're going to configure the selected CNI when you build that cluster. And you can also see a number of different Platform9 components that we use to manage the cluster.
Okay. Chris, would it be possible for you to zoom in a little bit? I think you're using a larger screen. Some of the attendees may not be able to see.
That's the wrong way. I can.
Thank you.
That's probably a good start.
Yep. Looks much better. Thank you. One additional question for you. Do I, as a user, need to install Docker, or I can start from zero and I don't have to worry about it?
You can start from zero. Excellent. We will take care of all of that installation.
Great.
So this is going through the process of building. At any point, if you run into a problem, you can click the view logs and we're going to remotely fetch the log file for you so you can see what's going on there as it's building out. Let me close some of these that I had open yesterday. So yeah, this is going through the process of building. So I guess to get started, a cloud account is a really quick way to get going. A couple of VMs is also a really quick way to get going. What I did not show was what happens when you have no nodes attached. So I now have no nodes attached. So if I click any of these, I'm actually going to get a set of steps. So if you're starting from scratch and you just have a VM local, you want to download our CLI. So just copy this, run it on your VM, copy this to install the CLI. That will then ask for your account details. So you can fill those in directly off of this screen. Just copy them in, paste them in, put your password in. Once that's installed, it's as simple as running the Platform9 command line and use the cluster prep node command. What this will do is complete those prerequisites that I talked about and authenticate the node to the SaaS management plane.
Very cool.
And then you'll be
Chris,
good to go.
Yeah, Chris, let me interrupt you. There have been some questions on the chat, so let's go through them one by one. So the very first one is, we use on-prem VMs with SSD disk, but doesn't matter which deployment method we use. Main issue is the performance of the master nodes that ends up suffering even on SSD. Do you have any good, bad experience with some hardware that should not be used with virtual machine-based Kubernetes clusters to avoid the XD master issues?
Whoa. That's a tough question.
I can take a crack at it if you're okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So there are two things that you need to be careful about. One is the I/O itself, and it looks like if you're using SSD, you shouldn't really have that problem. The other one is network. So when you have multiple masters running in a cluster and Eksd is talking to each other, so let's say there are three masters, they're all going to be talking to each other, and it expects a response from other node, Eksd, the peer response should be, I think, less than 1 second. It's pretty tight about it. With Platform9, you can configure it. This is an advanced configuration option, but if you don't configure anything, by default, from what I remember, it's 1 second, if I'm not mistaken. And which means that if your disk I/O is slow, let's say you are writing something to the Eksd, which Kubernetes API server does it all the time, it's going to write it to the SSD and to all of them, to all the SSDs on all the masters, and it's going to send the response back. If any of the component is slow, whether it's SSD or it's your network, Eksd will fail, and you will see all kinds of weird errors. So my suggestion is to not only look at your I/O, but also your network. I suspect network might be an issue. It may not be I/O, and we have seen some examples of that in the past in our customers' environment because their switch was not configured properly or some other issues in their own environment where they had the storage as well as the management traffic on the same network, and one was pushing out the other, causing intermittent problems. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is with regards to free tier, and Chris, I think you should take it. How much is it to use Platform9? Is it free for all the features, or different plans includes different features?
Sure. So Platform9, we have a free platform that's free forever. If you've got a cluster running, we'll keep that SaaS management plane up, running, and available, and handle all the upgrades, pushing out new Kubernetes versions for you. You get full access to the platform as it stands today. What isn't as part of the free platform is single sign-on configuration. That is something that we put in the growth and enterprise plans. But you can still add users as pretty simple in the platform itself. So that's really the only piece that where we have in the platform that's not in the free product. Coming shortly to enterprise users is white labeling support, so you'll be able to go in and customize the look and feel of the UI and replace logos. That's a fairly uncommon requirement from the user base. So that's something that's also just in the enterprise platform as well. So from a Kubernetes perspective, they're completely identical. You can run free clusters up to 20 nodes in the free platform. We really don't mind how large they are. So our expectation is you can run dev test production on free tier and use large virtual machines, use large physical servers or large instances on AWS. So you can run your applications at full performance.
Okay. So the next two questions are quite similar. So I will read them through and then you can take them. The first one is, can we import a Kubernetes cluster that already exists? And the second one is, Platform9, is it a manager service for Kubernetes cluster providers?
Sure. So importing clusters that already exist. Today, that's not something that we support. We are actively working on attaching into existing EKS clusters. We've had a lot of sort of demand around that from our user base. So we've actually started working on that, and we'll be looking to have something out in our 5.1 release, which will be becoming generally available in the free platform first in the middle of March. So that's how we're starting from that. Our intention is to look at that as an ability to connect into multiple different types of Kubernetes clusters, not just the hyperscaler providers as well. So that is something we'll be working on across the year.
Okay. The next one is, and this is an interesting one. The newer versions of Kubernetes will drop support for Docker as a runtime engine. Will I be able to use CRI-O as a runtime engine if I go with more advanced add cluster for on-prem nodes?
Oof. I think this time last year people would ask about CRO, and Roopak and I will be like, we don't see a lot of a demand for it, right? People ask, about CRI-O, and we're like, are you using it? And everyone was like, no. All of a sudden, I guess the community has made a decision that it is better placed as a runtime, and we're all going down that path. So right now, that's not something we support in the product. Obviously, because of upstream changes, that's something that we're all going to have to start learning about and adopting. So that will be coming in the coming months. I do believe I missed a question around a manager service for Kubernetes clusters, for cluster providers.
Yep, go ahead. I think you got that right. You kind of answered that, Chris. I think your answer was, Platform9 provides Kubernetes from the ground up. We are working on features that will enable us to import existing cluster. We are hoping to land that in March. Did I hear that right, Chris?
Yeah, for EKS, that would be the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, another way of looking at that question is, what do we do for the platform for Kubernetes clusters? So we run and operate them. So for our growth and enterprise customers, anything that goes wrong with that cluster, our team is on 24/7 to help get that up and running. When onboarding, we'll help with solution architecture and design. And our goal as a business is that we have smart people and software that keep your clusters running. So is it a managed service for Kubernetes cluster providers? Yeah, if you want to offer Kubernetes clusters as a service, we can definitely help make that happen. Because we want to make sure your clusters are up and running, right? We have an SLA. It's about our control plane in your private clouds or edge clouds. So yeah, that's one way of looking at us.
Okay.
Next.
The next one is, can it deploy Linux Windows clusters? Alternatively, can you deploy regular Linux-based Kubernetes clusters and separate cluster with Windows support and then expose services from Windows to Linux and vice versa?
Oof. We haven't ventured into the Windows cluster support as of yet. this would actually be one of the first times that someone's, sort of asked that question that I've come across. What I have seen is a number of people actually trying to use the Windows subsystem for Linux to just get a cluster locally running on their laptop using Platform9. When we launched the free product coming up on a year ago, that wasn't even something we thought people would do. It wasn't something we've ever really developed and tested against. But that is possible to make happen with a little bit of changes in the code that we're using in the CLI, and you see some chats in the Slack channel about that. There's a community member, Hayden, that's on there that actually got it working, which is pretty interesting. So I guess that's one way to do it. But in terms of running a Windows cluster, that's not on our list of supported implementations today. I actually think there was the response to the VM performance question around the response time between Eksd between the master nodes, and you're saying there could be a latency issue in etcd.
Yep. Yeah, I see. I think someone responded that I believe it's 500 milliseconds. I'm guessing that was a comment on my answer to the etcd response time. I thought it was 1 second, but I might be wrong. I have to look at the specifics.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the round trip time is 1 second. That would mean the one way would probably be 500 millisecond. So that's also possible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one. After launching a cluster, do we support upgrading or downgrading cluster?
We certainly do.
Do you want to show you the UI where we have the upgrade option, Chris?
Yeah, so let me click share screen again. Let me close the chat pop out. So this is now running 3 clusters. We can see the overview of all of the resources here in the middle, and we can see that one of these clusters is actually available to be upgraded. This is the one that I just built. So we can see Kube dashboards deploy, Kube config is available if you want to grab that token, or you can embed a username and password. Obviously, this is nowhere near as secure as a token. I might just download that just in case we have to pull up the dashboard at all. And Grafana gets deployed. And we completely manage the life cycle of Prometheus Alert Manager and Grafana. This should load me onto the node dashboard, I do believe. And we actually had a question internally about system uptime. They're like, I just built this cluster. Why does it say 3.4 weeks? This is the uptime of this particular node in the cluster itself. Obviously, everything just came up 10 minutes ago, so you can see metrics coming in. Number of different dashboards and exporters that we include out of the box on this. So feel free to jump in there at your own pace and explore what's going on. But back to the question at hand, upgrades, totally. So I intentionally deployed this on 117.9. All you have to do is come in, select, click upgrade cluster. If there is the potential that we have 2 options for upgrades. So right now, we're building on 117.9, and our internal package for that is 1361. This is similar to some of how the hyperscalers communicate. If we had a later version of the 117 Kubernetes release out, you'd actually see the option between doing a minor and a patch. This is saying the only thing that's available right now is a minor, so I'm just going to click confirm, and this will actually go off and upgrade that cluster. Being it's a single node one, that's pretty straightforward to get going. So we'll completely take care of that upgrading. As we right now we're working on a 119 certification. If that's available and we don't need to do anything in any changes to our SaaS control plane, that will actually just be made available as an upgrade option silently to all users as well. So yeah, that's upgrades. Downgrades, not something that we've approached it at simplifying in terms of making it a one-click process. Definitely something, we have that SLA on our clusters, and with our growth and enterprise users, right, upgrades are just as simple as doing that. If something does go wrong, right, etcd backups are used to do a rollback, and that's something that you would work with our support team proactively to do.
Chris, another related, not related, but another question was, what could be the best strategy to make sure clusters get in healthy state and all application and services are up and running with latest data synced? So I know Chris spoke about when you start the cluster, for each node, there is a fairly detailed list of steps available that we take to bring up the cluster, which includes starting the Docker, API server, so on and so forth. So folks who want to get into the details and try to debug if there are issues, if they are having issues with cluster creation, you can definitely look into that. And Chris also showed how you can actually look at the logs associated with those steps. So you can actually go and debug on what part it's failing. When you're working with Platform9 growth as well as the enterprise tier, we look at that data ourselves, make sure that your clusters is up and running and it's in healthy state. And from that point onwards, you can just deploy your application. On the free tier, you can use the tool that Chris showed earlier to debug those situations. But in most cases, you will see that will just work because we have done a lot of prerequisite checks. We installed Docker and some of the other components automatically as soon as you add it to our cluster. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next question is about CI/CD and what kind of tools already exist in the product. Matt has responded to that, but if you have any comments on that, Chris, happy to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, from a product perspective, we really focus on removing the need to have to get into that cluster and really spend a lot of time getting it up and running. We want our users to focus on the next order pieces, and we don't want to be prescriptive in saying use our Kubernetes and then use our pipeline, right? What we do with 100% of our enterprise and growth customers is work to integrate with existing platforms, right? We don't want this to be something that's a fundamental change across the entire organization. A lot of people are building applications today, and they have systems and platforms that developers and test and DevOps teams are used to working with. So we would work with you to help integrate into your existing platform. As you see, that's a tutorial that Matt posted about doing CI/CD pipelines on Kubernetes. That's a great way to get going. That tutorial is on Platform9 as an example.
Great, yeah. Thank you. Next question, and I can take this. How is Platform9 different from AWS EKSD Distro? So if you look at AWS EKSD Distro, all they do is they publish different binaries and Docker images for Kubernetes components. So if you look at Kubernetes, you have API server, you have scheduler, you have etcd, you have kubelet, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing a bunch of other components. But there are, let's say, 10 components out there. And those components need to be installed, upgraded, and managed. And EKSD does none of that. If you just saw what Chris did, it's a complete solution. It's not a distribution that AWS EKSD is a distribution that you can download, and then you can use the Kubernetes the hard way for folks who are familiar with that, which means we can bring up all those things and then tie them up together with configuration files and so on and so forth. So that's one option. Platform9 is a solution by which you can use one-click deployment, one-click upgrade, and Platform9 managed service associated with it on all the platform. EKSD is being distributed by other vendors and toolkits. They are trying to push those binaries into some of the tools that are out there versus a solution. So they're very, very different. It's like saying, hey, there is an new Linux kernel available that AWS has compiled, but there is no operating system to install it. So Platform9 is the operating system with kernel embedded in it, and Eksd is just the kernel. Chris, any more thoughts, comments on that?
No, I think you covered it fairly well, encapsulating the I guess the main differences between the two approaches.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, this is an interesting one. When you say that Prometheus is managed, will it play well with third-party tools like Lens? And also, how will it behave with large clusters? Will it scale vertically, and is there a single pane of glass for monitoring that would expose all errors and alerts across all cluster? Is Cortex or Thanos used for that, or something Platform9 specific?
I think that's a great question. Roopak and I have actually done entire webinars sort of just dedicated to the monitoring approach that we take internally, right? At Platform9, and part of that is Prometheus running in clusters. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start with the end of that question actually up front. So is a review that is, I guess, federating across all clusters. So each cluster that has monitoring deployed, we then are building out dedicated dashboards for aggregating that in. So my clusters do have a lot of things broken in them. Unable to mount volume for my Prometheus. So what we're working on is a really simple way to provide a storage class to that Prometheus deployment, which then means everything's persisted, which then allows some direct actions to be taken onto that monitoring deployment. So up front, we're federating all alerts across all clusters. You can filter by the clusters that are running. This is a 24-hour time frame that we pull in. You can filter the entire view to be less than 24 hours. As alarms fire, you can come in and click on that, and you can see the details about what's going wrong in this environment. If you want to see the definition of these rules, you can come over to the rules dashboard and see what we're shipping, what's running in each cluster, and see the details of those rules. How does it play with Lens? This Prometheus Grafana deployment is running. You can connect to it. I've actually connected external monitoring platforms that want Prometheus running to consume data from, and integrated it with that very easily. This won't clash with any other instances of Prometheus that are running, or other monitoring platforms either. The next piece of that question was talking to integrating with the likes of Cortex and other external platforms. So internally here at Platform9, we actually run Cortex. So, you know, as someone that says we're SaaS managed, we have a team of people and we have platforms in place to manage Kubernetes clusters at scale for all of our customers. So we actually collect data from the clusters into the SaaS management plane, and then that forwards that data into Cortex, so we can understand what's going on with all of our customers' clusters. So what that's using is things like Prometheus Remote Write to forward data. So there's absolutely nothing stopping you from configuring the Prometheus that's running within the cluster today to use a remote write endpoint as well to federate that data in. There's no user interface built around configuring or changing this deployment. That's something that our team's working on. It is something, though, you could get in directly into the operator deployment, and I've got a blog that I'm about to publish on doing just that. So stay tuned if you're looking to add a storage class or start looking at doing things like remote write set up for those. But if you just critically want to see what's going on, that's what the monitoring dashboard is here for. So you better come in and just see alarms immediately across all your clusters for a 24-hour period. Obviously, not too helpful for my cluster. 250 alarms from a single cluster really makes it quite noisy, especially when they're all firing on the same event.
Thank you, Chris. The second one is one of your favorite topics, CSI. So let me read that through. Who has the responsibility for installing storage CSI drivers, Platform9 or customer?
This is one of my favorite topics because it is very hard to do a lot of things, even using Helm apps on a cluster without storage. So the responsibility of installing that driver is with the customer. This is something that Roopak and I and the entire team know that we really want to improve in the product today. Installing a CSI driver from a SaaS management plane into a remote cluster does come along with some challenges. So we've been looking at sort of a select number of vendors that we can support that for. Obviously, things like NetApp or Dell EMC devices and stuff like that, they've got some prerequisite checks and some prerequisite steps that need to be completed before a driver is going to work properly. With our enterprise customers, our solution architects will work with our users to make sure that happens and then make sure it's all up and running. If you're in the free tier and you just want a storage provider to then install a CSI driver for and make some storage classes so you can have your persistent volumes. Rook Ceph is something that we use internally. We use for a lot of our demo platforms as well. And you'll see some links posted to cool Kubernetes. There's a guide there for getting Rook up and running. Portworx is another great example. My cluster's there if you're wondering why they were named PWX and Portworx. It's exactly that. I've been doing a bunch of testing and breaking things and just trying out different apps, deploying onto the Portworx. Metadata and OpenEBS are also great alternatives there. The one common thing amongst those four, I guess, storage providers that I just mentioned is the gate to get going is going to be having mounted but unformatted volumes attached to each of your virtual machines. Rook, I personally normally just use a 10 gig mount on my worker nodes, and then you can get going pretty quick. Same with Portworx, having, I believe it's 20 gig volumes mounted to your worker nodes, at least 3 worker nodes. Works best. Single masters are also fine for a Portworx deployment. Obviously not great for production, but if you're looking for dev tests just to learn and play around with, definitely do a single master. Once that's run, you use kubectl to do your deployments of the CSI drivers. And once that's up and running, you'll actually be able to see that within the UI. If I click share my screen, share. So I've just come into the infrastructure dashboard, drilling into my Portworx 1 cluster. So you can see what's going on. Cluster details, you'll see the networking backend of this one is Flannel, and you'll see the CSI driver details that's there. So Portworx is the CSI driver that's there, list of capabilities that are part of that driver as well. So our goal is to really expand and simplify that process, and then some items that we'll be touching on this year.
Okay. The next one is, this is more of a security question. Is there a concern running Docker as root? And if so, are there potential where container can overtake the host node and do malicious stuff? And related one is, what is rootless as CRIO or containerd? I can take that. By default, Docker does run as a high privileged daemon, and because of various reasons. There are ways in which you can run it without it, but there are features in Kubernetes which allows, and this is by design, where you can have certain pods that can access host level stuff. So for example, certain daemon sets can actually go and work with the networking and it actually helps with the configuration of the host, for example. So in some cases, it's by design. Can you work around it? Absolutely, yes. By default, when you are running inside the container, you do not have access to the host by any means. Now, there have been vulnerabilities that have caused um, the user inside a container to jump out and attack other containers. So there have been issues with that. That's why when you see most of the systems, specifically in Kubernetes or even Docker, they are not multi-tenant. So the whole cluster is dedicated to a tenant on public cloud, and they're not shared between multiple tenants. So as long as the use case is a single tenant, I would be happy to run those containers. By default, do not allow containers to have root access. And with Platform 9, we have taken a lot of steps with IC Linux policies and so on and so forth. So when we and make sure that the ports are not open and bunch of other stuff. But as and when you start it, you're sure that it is as secure as possible. Apart from obviously any vulnerability that we may discover in future, which we fix as we move on. Okay, on to the next one. I think it's very similar. Actually, no, I lost track of that. Which load balancer will be using in Platform 9 for on-prem deployment?
That's a good question. I actually took a step to prepare to answer this just now. So I'm gonna go back to my deployment. So I just need to move some Zoom screens out of the way so I can see my own screen. So I actually just deleted my my second cluster I had. We can see the one we started off with is now running 118 and everything's back up and running. So add cluster. I'm using VM, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to choose a single master here. AMA multi. I'm going to stick with 118. So the question was, what load balancer do we deploy? We deploy an operate metal LB in layer 2 mode for on-prem clusters. I would love to demonstrate this running. However, as an OpenStack company as well, we actually have our internal cloud is running on OpenStack, and I do not have a reserved IP range in the OpenStack environment that I'm actually running this particular cluster in. But if you're in a VMware environment or you have a reserved range, you have the allowed port securities on an OpenStack cluster, provide a address pool range. You can provide multiple, and we'll deploy and operate metal LB. So then if you're using a Helm app, for example, that uses or expects a load balancer to be there by default, that will just deploy and come up and operate exactly as you would expect it to. There is another question directly under that one about CNI. So I'm just going to go through this process super quick. On this page up front, we can see the cluster name, and we can see the default CNI we're deploying is Calico. I'm going to click next. I'm going to choose my master node. This is a single master cluster. This can't be expanded to a multi-master, but you can start a multi-master cluster with just one node. So this is really just there to get clusters up and running quickly. So simple master, choose the node. I'm going to choose my 2 worker nodes. And then the next step here is network configuration. So if you want to provide an FQDN for the API endpoint, that goes in there. You can do a configuration of your container and services CIDR ranges. And then the next piece is CNI. So we support Flannel and Calico for deployment. Our preferred approach is Calico. If you're worried about how that's going to interact in your existing network, encapsulate the traffic and use NAT on outgoing, and you really shouldn't have any problems in terms of networking and accessing that cluster externally. Neither with traffic that's running within the cluster itself. There's some other configurations here for interface detection method that you can go through as well. First found will obviously bound to the first interface found. If you have multiple network interfaces, feel free to select one of these other and provide the regular expression input to capture that selected interface. I'm just going to roll with the defaults here. Click next. If you want to change any of the API groups and versions, feel free. If you want to use key value tags in Platform9 for just managing multiple clusters and stuff like that, feel free to configure that. If not, finish and review, and you can see everything that's been set up. So we can see Calico as the CNI. We manage the life cycle and the version of Calico. Once again, with our growth and enterprise guys, our support team are trained on Calico, and they're going to get in there and make sure that that's working and operating exactly as you expected. If you're on the free tier, Slack's a great way to get in contact with us if you're running into any networking problems, and our networking engineers will always happy to help people get up and running. Calico is a nice CNI from our perspective. New features that are coming in it, like encryption for node-to-node traffic in WireGuard, is a really great addition. We work pretty closely with Tigera on Calico and Calico Enterprise as well. BGP is also quite flexible and becoming very popular as well. So it's another great option for deploying and running Calico as your CNI. This cluster will now often be built.
One more thing I would mention for our enterprise customers, specifically on the telco side, we also have support for things like Multus, SRIV, DPDK, and a bunch of other things that's not available in the free tier as of now, but those things are also available. One more related question was with respect to, I'm not sure whether Chris, you'd answered this or not, with respect to the load balancer on-prem.
Yeah, I touched on that. It's Metal LB. Yep.
All right. Let me see where I here. Okay. What are the implications of enabling swap on worker nodes outside of quality of service? I can take that.
Sure.
By default, with Platform9, we disable swap. And this is the recommended best practice for Kubernetes. And as you mentioned, it is because of the quality of service. And you can disable it. There are advanced options, but we really don't recommend you to do that. And specifically with multiple replicas of your service running across multiple nodes, some using swap, some not using swap, it becomes hard to reason about the performance of your service. And that's the primary reason it's disabled.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, do we support provisioning of well-known operators such as Kafka, Cassandra?
Yeah, there's a post from Matt, who's one of our certified Kubernetes administrators that's now actually in our support team. We're working through the process of reintroducing an application catalog. We did have this running on Helm 2, but about a year ago when we launched our free Kubernetes platform, we actually went through the process of containerizing our SaaS control plane. That, as much as every other organization has experienced or is experiencing, is not an easy task. Lots to learn about running an application in Kubernetes. So as part of that transformation, we actually removed or didn't port the Helm service. So we're reintroducing that back in. So in the 5.1 release, there'll actually be Helm running in the SaaS control plane, and there'll be an application catalog. You can go in and use that to deploy applications. That's, I guess, one way of answering this, but not sort of answering it specifically to the operator approach. So our deployment of Prometheus Grafana uses an operator to deploy that. And this year we'll be going through the process of introducing a couple more services that are managed like that by Platform9. Looking at Kafka and Cassandra directly, as long as you've got the base requirements operating there, which will be a storage class and persistent volumes, you won't have any issues deploying an operator into Platform9, right? It's upstream Kubernetes, and if anything is going wrong in that process, I really want to know, right? Because we expect that to work. That cluster shouldn't prevent you from doing anything at all in any way, shape, or form. So operators you'll be fine for yourself. Our application catalog is coming back, and this year we'll be introducing some new members to our services that we use an operator for and we control the lifecycle of as well.
Let's take the last question. Have you had experience of logging to LogRhythm with their open collector to enable analysis of the log? I'm not really familiar with LogRhythm. Are you, Chris?
I have not. On that topic, so one of the things that we do actually have an operator for is FluentD. So when I was going through that cluster creation process, you can actually use a tag to turn on FluentD there. We've got a blog, as well as in core Kubernetes, you can see instructions for how to enable FluentD. And then you'll actually have to use a kubectl command to provide FluentD with its output location, which you could use, I guess, LogRhythm. I've done it with an elk stack. So no direct experience, but we've got FluentD in the product. If you want to give it a go, it's in what we call an early access stage, and that should get you going pretty quick.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I think we're just about at time. So yeah, I think this is probably a good place for us to wrap. I did just want to mention that, if we didn't get to your questions, that we will follow up. Again, as mentioned earlier, our Slack channels are always available. We have great support there. And hopefully you guys had a chance to experience that today. We will be sending you a recording of today's session, along with some additional resources and tutorials related to some of the topics we covered. And again, we will also submit a survey there, just to kind of gauge, possible topics for upcoming AMA sessions. I did want to say a big shout out and thank you to Chris and Roopak and Matthew Work, who also was handling your questions in the chat.
Yeah, I just noticed on the attendees thing, I've never done a live Ask Me Anything webinar. I think next time I will click the allow to talk button, and then people will hear just more than 2 voices. So sorry to Suresh and Dimitro. Next time.
All right, awesome, guys. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll follow up shortly.
Thanks everyone. See you the next time.
Thanks everyone. Bye now.
Bye.